Hi, I'm Chris. See, it's like an alcoholic meeting now, which I feel way more comfortable at, because we all just yell and cry to each other, then we go out to the normal world, where the not alcoholic people like us are, and we don't know how to talk to them, right? So I wanted to thank everyone here at SecT for bringing me out. I flew out yesterday from Colorado, where it was nice and cold, and I'm getting ready for winter to start skiing. And I wanted to thank you guys for waking up early and sitting and listening to my boring-ass presentation. Okay, so this is what a presentation looks like, and you know, I'm Chris, and you have to do the obligatory "who the hell are you" section of your presentation, so that's what this is. That's me in all sorts of different formats. My favorite one is Fat Chris, where I put on a 400-pound fat suit to give a talk on using neurolinguistic programming to pick up chicks, because it was more fun than talking about hacking stuff during that conference. My credentials? Oh, there you go. That's probably the normal credentials that people associate with me. So it'll probably be easier if you view those, and not just a blank one. I have one of these wonderful certs. You can too if you go to the internet and know how to use Photoshop. I got it because I thought it was a really awesome lock, and they gave me a crappy piece of paper. So I was pretty disappointed, because CISA locks are way better than the certification is. I have a CISSP, which is also something that you can get if you have Photoshop. And apparently you could hack your way into the system too really, really easily. SQL injection. But still, you can really easily. So you could actually make it valid as well, which is kind of fun. I have a whole bunch of other little stickers and stuff that I did because I've been around in security for a while, because I get drunk at conferences, which means I've been in security forever. Okay, so does any of this stuff matter? Not really. I mean, it doesn't. At the end of the day, whether I was a rocket scientist or whether I was just some schmuck they picked up at a bar, as long as I'm halfway entertaining and say something, it really doesn't matter, right? Yeah? No? Be like, oh, I don't know, I'm on the fence. If you don't like it, feel free to troll me. That's also fine. I highly encourage it. If you want to troll me while I'm talking, I'm all about it. Because I think it's funny too, because that's what I usually do to people. Also, in this, I'm not going to really talk about hacking very much. I know, right? You go to a hacker show and you don't talk about hacking as the first talk. That's a real good way to start. So I'm just preparing you for that. I'm not going to drop ODay. I'm not going to teach you how to word dial stuff. I'm definitely not going to go over the OWASP top 10 and how to hack web apps. I'm not even going to tell you about your phone and how insecure it is and how you have to shut it off and, you know, run back to the mountains and ignore everything because we get owned all day long. Cool? You're like, well, then why are you here? I'm not going to do it no matter how much you ask me. I mean, I probably will at some point, because I'll get drunk and I'll be like, yeah, we broke into this crap last week, and it was awesome. And here's how you could do it. But I'd rather have you guys think about some of the things, because I fly a lot. I go and I see a lot of different clients in a lot of different spaces and markets all over the planet. And I have to think about these things all the time. And sometimes I come to these little mini epiphanies where I actually feel like I learned something in my career. And most of the time, I just kind of shoo myself off, and I'm like, shut up, stop talking. All right, we're all on the same page, so let's get started with talking about something. So I'm here, and why I'm here is because I got this email one day from the SecT guys about a blog post that I wrote. And the blog post that I wrote was this kind of ridiculous rant while I was sitting on this airplane, and it was all about trying to understand why everybody's writing about Anonymous and LulzSec and everybody getting hacked all the time and all the businesses that are going down and everybody's losing this money and, you know, the sky's falling and cats and dogs are living together, and it's just chaos, right? And I just sort of didn't get it. So I started looking at it thinking, well, wow, we've been pretty screwed forever at least since I've been in the industry for the last 15 years, right? It hasn't gotten more, like, unmessed up. It's gotten more messed up. People have more stuff on them that's more ownable, and it's really easy to own someone. I know I get owned all the time. I get it. But why is this such a, like, prevalent thing? So, I'm, like, looking at all these people getting owned, and I'm thinking, all right, so they get owned over and over and over and over and over, right? And you come out with this result of some of these people who are just the biggest companies in the world getting absolutely beat. They're just getting the crap beat out of them. So what's the point of that, right? Well, all of us immediately go to the default answer, right, which is our users are stupid, right? So all the dumb users got us hacked, and our awesome impenetrable program, or the executives are stupid because they didn't let us get whatever toy or shut off whatever connection, or all of these general type of things, right? It's the generic security excuse that we've always used and hid behind, which is, well, the users are kind of dumb and we just have to deal with this environment that's volatile like that. I saw it more as like a sneak attack. That looks like really fun. But it was just that people really aren't ready, and it confuses me how they're not ready, especially since we spend so much money and all of us are gainfully employed. Otherwise, we couldn't afford to go to conferences, right? So we have jobs, we do security stuff, yet we're not ready for this thing that our whole career is built around being ready for. And it just kind of confuses me. So instead of looking at the industry again and getting mad and blaming people in the industry and whatever else, I tried to look at, well, what other fights have we gotten in? So, all right, well, let's kind of look at the evolution of war, right? And how sort of war and big major battles and wars have been fought. So I was thinking there's always like a superpower of whatever time period. There's always someone who's doing way better than everybody else and conquering lands and economically dominating and pretending to be the China of right now. And they have all the money and all the people, and they just start taking stuff over. So I was looking at those, but I thought, wow, all of the people who used to be really big-time superpowers don't exist anymore. I mean, most of them aren't even around as countries, more or less even surviving with all of the land and all of these wars that they fought. So I looked at the Persians, right? They were one of the kind of staple beginning empire builders, right? They conquered vast percentages of the world. Yet, this giant Persian army that conquered most of the planet got completely owned by the Scythians. Completely owned. Because the Scythians would find them, wait till they were in some type of choke point, slaughter a whole bunch of them, and run away. And after doing that, 100 times, and they started thinning out the armies, then they could go and start fighting hand-to-hand and straight up fight these people. But they got so bad that even the Persian leaders at the time were surprised that their armies of the thousands and thousands versus hundreds of people were getting away with a head, or even being able to get away. So that sounds kind of like what we're going through right now a little bit, doesn't it? I'm surprised any business can get away and even conduct business because they're so easy to get owned. So then the Romans, right? So the Romans did a good job with that too. They started conquering most of the world, and the Britons started destroying them and running out of the woods and stabbing a bunch of soldiers and then running back into the woods. They didn't really beat them, but they started to weaken the will of the Romans so much that the Goths ended up beating them. Well, not those Goths, but the Goths ended up beating them as the, historical version of the event. Right? You have Genghis Khan, ruthless warrior, who was so badly destroyed from these hit-and-run tactics, from these kind of sneak attacks, that the Tagnuts, it's still said today that no one really knows how he died. But the best theory is that a princess that he captured put a pair of pliers in her thing and hurt him so badly when he was trying to take her that he died. That's hardcore. That is an opportunistic attack. If you know it's coming, get ready, right? Here's the weak point. What do? We put traps, and we figure out how to survive this attack. And what happened? I don't see us all doing eye for an eye stuff and running around on horses. I mean, we probably would be had he not passed, right? So these are all really relevant to us because we have these giant businesses that are taking over vast majorities of the market space, and then they're getting owned, and they kind of like shrivel up and hang out in the corner for a little bit, and they're like, yeah, so we just lost all your data, and we feel totally bad about it. But, you know, hey, we're Sony. We'll still make a cool TV for you or something, if that's all right. Right? It's silly, but it's the kind of environment that we have to deal with. We have the Ottomans, the entire Ottoman Empire versus Dracula, right? Another just massive, unbelievable force. The Ottomans conquered like almost all of multiple continents, right? They were everywhere. They were like the Romans. They just spread out because they were owning everything. And then all of a sudden, these little people up in the hills, for 25 years, they couldn't conquer them. They could conquer everyone else. They could conquer every one of the biggest military forces. But for 25 years, the Albanians held them off. That's awesome. That's a lesson that we can learn, that some little group held off the largest superpower in the world for 25 years straight. Yeah, whatever, they were immortal and they drank blood and they killed people, but still, that's pretty awesome. Right? We had it here in the 1600s, the Dutch snapbane, right? Sweden was trying to expand territories. There was all sorts of awesome attacks that went on in the middle of the expansion of territories. The snapbane came in and started destroying entire legions of troops, with somewhere around 100 to 200 Dutch fighters. And what they would do is hide in areas and wait until they can cause such chaos on the battlefield when the people weren't ready to battle that people retreated, because they had to regroup. They had to figure out, what is our plan for fighting this force? Right? This little guy. Boy, was that guy a pain in the ass. Napoleon, right? I'm sure all of us know people with Napoleon complexes who just freak out and yell at us because they're short and they have to Napoleon-style assert themselves. But a brilliant leader, a vicious dictator, and a militant superpower ended up giving birth to the name guerrilla. Giving birth to the name guerrilla forces. It was during this war, it was during the wars when France was trying to conquer Spain, that guerrillistas and Juan Martín Díaz, right, was taking forces of 20 or 30 people and attacking legions of thousands of French troops. Imagine that. You're like hanging out, eating tapas or whatever. And they're like, hey, we're going to go attack an entire French legion. And you sort of like look around the dinner table and you're like, well, just us. Just a couple of us are going to go attack the army that's crushing the planet. And they're like, that sounds cool. Pour me some sangria and let's go kill some people. Right? And they did. They were dominating those forces to the point where even Napoleon was forcing legions into the areas to surround areas where he thought Diaz and some of the women guerrillistas lived and burning down whole cities just to try and vet out one or two of these people because they were causing such casualties on their forces that it was more beneficial for him to stop his war of expansion and kill these people than it was to continue. That's pretty awesome. And then we get to my favorite, right? Because it was bred into my history of being wrong because I probably should be British, even though I'm not. I'm just too loud and annoying, so they had to make America. But you have these people in funny costumes, right? And they own this country. And people in the country start to revolt. And this superpower of the time, who owns all of this land all over the world, is trying to keep control of their citizens. So they dress up in these funny costumes and go to war. They go to war. And so they go to war in a way that's really, really conventional and kind of funny when we look at it now. They march in these big, giant lines in bright red and white costumes like you can't see them. 1,000 people in red costumes with drums and trumpets and all sorts of other crazy fanfare. And this, you don't know whether it's a parade and you should throw rice or get a gun. Because that's how they did it back then. And when they decided that they were going to do things, they did it in such a grandiose scale that they would try and psychologically intimidate their opponent. But what they didn't realize is that in this particular war, their opponent was looking at them. They had their eyes open, and they saw, hey, I can see these guys coming miles away. So what did they do? Like any of us do, who attack networks, who attack people, who attack anything, you identify what's the vulnerability with this. What is it? It's obvious. Come on. I can't be that boring, am I? If I am, you could tell me. It's okay. We're friends now. All right. Huh? The drummer boy. Yeah, heck yeah. It's given away before they even get a chance to fight. Right? It's given away before they ever get a chance to fight. You guys see what that is? So, before you even get a chance to fight, it's already out there and you're already dead. And all you have to do is wait for it to come to you. Right? It's an opportunistic attack. And these superpowers fall victim to opportunistic attack very, very, very easily. So they line up, they kneel down, and they get ready to shoot. Then you have somebody screaming fire, so you definitely know when you could be taking some shots and kind of listen and be like, oh, he said fire. They done? Yep. There we go. Okay. Shoot again. No. He's saying, no, here, come on. Doesn't seem like it'd be really effective as a technique, but apparently that helped them conquer most of the planet that way. But, the vulnerabilities in their fighting style was easily outed by the guerrilla fighters. Guerrilla fighters, because they were hiding. And they could hide very easily, and they could take really small numbers of troops and attack these giant superpowers with vast resources. And more planning, which my opinion on planning is that planning is guessing. It's just advanced placement guessing with graphs. But they were planning for all of these types of fights, and they were losing every single one of them because their plan was wrong. Because they weren't planning for these guys, right? Because their enemy was hidden. Does anybody know this photographer? Awesome. Bowlin is some awesome photography. You see the guy sitting in the, do you see him sitting there? That's just so cool. And I just put another one in because it's just so awesome when you think of how do you hide in plain sight. And when you hide in plain sight, that's where you're the most effective because you're not constrained by your hiding spot. You get to be in the open, and everyone else is hiding behind their firewall, behind their defenses, behind all of the things that they planned. They have their plan so far and so thick in front of their face that they can't actually move. They just have to follow the plan. They have blinders on. They're not allowed to go anywhere else, which allows them to get conquered very quickly. And conquered they got over and over and over and over and over again. I tried to shrink that to put all the compromises in one page, and it ended up being size .001 font, and it just looked like a whole bunch of lines across the paper because there were so many of them. But what happens? Well, after you find these vulnerabilities in these big mega people because of how they operate and where they operate and what they do and the constraints that they have, you win, right? You get to take on the superpowers and win. You don't just get to fight them and embarrass them. You literally win against them. So in looking at those, I started looking a little bit at, what's the structure of guerrilla warfare and how does that happen? Because it's obvious from history lessons that it works. It works really, really well. Now, Mao Zedong and all of them said, yes, you have to have guerrilla and conventional warfare blended together, which I agree with. But the real leadership structure of guerrilla warfare looks kind of like something else that we know of, right? There's cells, there's saboteurs, there's field squads, they have training. They have some type of coordinated logistics, but their ability to be flexible persists. Right? They have some type of political affiliation so that they could get more guerrilla fighters with them without having to spend the time to go enroll people in why do you need to join my cause. Their cause is joinable. Meaning, if you think someone's going to attack you today, if their cause is joinable, tomorrow there is more of those attackers than you planned for today. And it will continue to grow, and you can't anticipate its growth. That's a really hard thing to fight, especially in our industry. It's a really hard thing to fight. If you knew, it's the same case that we make for hopping IP addresses and why IDS is stupid. Because, well, great, I'll change my address. Okay, I'll use another port. Fine, I'll push it through Tor exit nodes and I'll make it come from the entire internet. What are you going to do, block the whole internet? Right? We have excuses against that because of that enrollment. All right, so enough for some of those history lessons. My answer to the human stupidity one is the only patch is experience. If you touch the stove enough, you either become the type of person who really enjoys pain and gets off on it, or you realize that it's hot and that it sucks and that you don't want to touch a stove anymore because it hurts and that's just not fun. And you want to do fun things, not things that hurt. Right? Well, apparently, again, stupid Americans, we didn't get this, so we got our ass kicked in Vietnam because they didn't care, right? They're like, we'll blow away our own people, your people, everybody, because we are going to take what opportunities we have and capitalize on them to win. Because we are not playing a game, we're playing only to win. So they decided, all right, well, we know what's going on and we know the battlefield better than the people who are trying to hang out with us. So it's something that we really need to learn is that the battlefield that you have can be squarely defined by your knowledge of that battlefield. If you know that digging holes and getting ready in this type of way allows you to fight hundreds of thousands of troops with thousands of people, you have a severe tactical advantage. So the reason I'm talking about all this, if it doesn't make sense, is because I want us to understand and identify that it's not about spending money. It's not about creating a defense structure. It's about knowing the battlefield that we're on so that we can be ready to fight instead of be ready to defend. Because defense only has one option: success. Other than that, you lose. Fighting, you can fight with defense. You can fight with even losing certain portions of that, because if you hurt them well enough, it's like giving up your queen in a game of chess. If you trap them in a way that you know it's to your benefit, you can take and sustain losses correctly in order to survive the war. That's what they did. And we ran home with our tails between our legs. We learned a lot from it, but we ran home. Right? So how does all of this apply to us? Well, right now our businesses are the superpowers. Right? The businesses that we're in, that we're trying to secure, are the superpowers. We make the money. We have the interwebs. We own the IP space. And there's a bunch of people out there who either want access to it, politically motivated against the stuff that our company does, or maybe just want to go attack us for fun because they can prove that they can, right? So what's our like conventional strategy against all of these types of attacks that we know that happen every single day, everywhere? Well, we use encryption, which is anybody, I still have one of those t-shirts. Does anybody remember that? That was just glory day right there. You can't export it. All right, I'll make a t-shirt. Here you go. It was just great, right? So that works really well. Intrusion prevention, detection systems, seeing how that stuff usually works really, really, really well. Anybody have IDS systems that work awesome? I want to say it one more time in case I was just fat. Does anyone have an IDS system that works really well? Yep, there's a good market. How about data leak prevention? That's a fancy word. Anybody have one of those that works well? This is. Are your arms broken, or they really don't work, right? But we buy them. We buy the hell out of them. How about antivirus? Someone has antivirus that works well, right? No? Come on. All right, another question. How many of you have been hacked? Okay, I know arms work now. I have one honest person who lives in the room. Cool. Okay. Do you recognize that when you get a virus, bad things happen? Yes? Head nods? Yes, they're alive. Awesome. Okay. How many people have gotten a virus? Yeah. Okay. How many people have gotten hacked? A couple more honest people. We're getting somewhere. So, when you get a virus, that means that something compromised the control or a mechanism in your system and made your system do something that it was not planning to do. E.g., you got hacked if you got a virus. So if you've ever been, I mean, I know we don't want to like, oh, I raised my hand at this conference, then my stock prices in my company went down. I get that. But we have to at least recognize that when you get viruses, you have been hacked, so we can at least get over the, oh, well, I've never been hacked. If anybody who says that is just a straight-up liar. I don't know anyone on the planet, unless you just don't have technology. And even then, you've probably been hacked socially, like often. Because we all have manipulative women and men in our life that hack us on a regular... Dude, I'm married. I got hacked way bad. I got my ass kicked, and I just accept it. Like, I know that I got hacked, right? I get it. And I'm over that part. Like, now I'm just trying not to get hacked every single day and only, like, pick which times I get hacked, which doesn't even work. Trust me, I can show you IM chat logs. I've got no game left. All right. How else do we deal with this stuff? Strong authentication? Someone has strong auth that works. Yes? Single sign-on? Nice. Like, that's awesome because I love finding those people because I look up to them because I've never seen it work, right? Like, I see it work some places, and then all of a sudden it goes from, like, working really, really well to one day their business sort of shifts to doing something new, and then their whole life gets torn apart because the one application that they're using doesn't integrate with, like, Tivoli or whatever cool authentication solution that they're using the right way. And then it breaks the whole thing, and they go back to just going, whatever, log in clear text. I don't give a shit. Integrity monitoring. We do that, too. Right? So all of these things are great. We stockpile all these awesome munitions, right? We stockpile all of these things and log management, and we have all these great metrics, and we have all these awesome plans, right? And at the end of the day, they manifest themselves in this giant pile of crap that sits in server rooms and on our desktop and annoys us because it has pop-ups all the time and whatever else, and our firewall blocks everything, and we're good to go, right? Just like all of these way overfunded armies who planned for everything and had the troops and had pikemen and horses and this and that and had every style of whatever the cool new thing was. And they were the leaders because they had all the great technology and everything else, and they just got owned. Because they spent a ton of money building one of these for a fight where people had like jets and bombs. And one of those does not survive well against those types of fights. And even then, well, those are pretty good. You know what you do? Instead of attacking it, you just walk in. And you just go kill the king. And then all of a sudden, people don't know what to do anymore. So there's really easy ways to attack things and get around this massive, giant, grandiose plan that we have. I liken this to this time that my house was leaking. And my roof was leaking pretty badly, so that, you know, my wife, after she continued to hack me over and over again and made me feel bad about myself, I decided to, like, go play handyman, right? So I'm going to go fix my roof. So I go upstairs and I figure out where this leak is through some total gift of God, because God knows I'm not a handy person. I break stuff, I don't fix it. And I figure out where this leak is, and I like read on the internet, and Google teaches me how to fix my roof, and I'm sitting up there with like my laptop, and you know, I'm the only person who fixes their roof with a laptop. Normal people use like nails and, you know, shingles, glue and stuff. I'm like up there with my laptop, like I'll figure it out. A typical stupid IT person, right? And I figure it out, and I'm like running the hose against the thing, and I'm like really proud of myself. I'm like, I fixed my roof. This is awesome. And later that day, I like triumphantly walk downstairs, and I'm like, yeah, totally a man. I got this handled. And the next day, it rains like crazy, and I'm driving around with like this big smile on my face, like, I got you, rain. You don't have anything. Like, you can't even get in my house. Leak is fixed. And I came home, and like 4 of my computers were completely drenched in water. I had a section of my floor that was completely destroyed. There's like a mold on the walls from this thing, because we ended up leaving. Because I was so confident, I was like, we don't need to check out the house. We could just go. We went to Vegas for the weekend, right? And yeah, I'm stupid. Whatever. But the part that kind of threw me for a loop is I'm like, well, how did this happen? My wife left the window open, and the rain came in the window. I was pissed. I was like, I spent hours learning how to fix a roof, and my house got destroyed because the window was open. This is just the crappiest thing ever, right? But I was thinking about it, and I had one of those like good InfoSec moments of like, this is a metaphor for every single day that I live. As I go and I do all of this crazy work to show them this one hole, and then the window gets left open, and everything gets destroyed. So I thought I'd share that, because I don't know, have you guys gone through stuff like this at work? This is like the weird Sisyphus life that we lead, where we like push the rock up and we're like, yeah, I got it to the top, and then it rolls over us and we like push it up to the other hill. All right, so what do? So we probably are all kind of on the same page that superpowers get attacked and owned, and that the strategies that we use don't really work because the stats support it. First part, I want to like walk around with those things and just post them up everywhere. But we have to kind of stop thinking about what everybody else is doing, because it doesn't really benefit us at all. If you base your protection program of your business based on someone that you know or something that you know in another business, you're setting yourself up to fail. Because your business is unique, right? Otherwise, you wouldn't have competitors. I mean, does anyone here work for, like, Microsoft or one of those companies that just doesn't have competitors? Right? But most of us have competitors, which means our business isn't unique. So if we don't protect it in a unique way, we're just setting ourselves up to get owned like everyone else. So why are we doing all the same things as them when we're a different business? We have to protect our business. So we need to stop worrying about what they're doing. We need to stop reading about all of this. This is what the coolest, neatest new, take this pill and you'll be skinny and pretty thing is. Like, that stuff just doesn't work. Maybe someday it will, but in my experience, I've never seen any of those things that are like the silver bullet work. Yet we just blow a bunch of money on it, and then we all go sad panda when, stuff breaks at the end of the day. And we're like, oh, how come my WAF didn't stop this SQL injection? They're like, well, it only looks for 1 = 1, and you type 2 = 2. And it totally got around everything. But we'll write a new signature so that when somebody types 3 = 3, you can be pissed at us again. Right? It's ridiculous, but it's how they make their money. Okay. There is no such thing as set and forget. Everything you have in your environment needs care and feeding and testing and training. Everything. The people, the devices, all of that stuff. And it stinks because we're like, oh, man, that sounds like work. Well, if you're not going to do it that way, just don't put it in. It's easier. It's easier to just get owned through that vector than go through the heartbreak of, like, I got owned through my thing that was poorly managed. Anybody get owned because of crappy firewall rules? Dude, I could tell you major telcos that I worked for in the States and all over the world that just got owned. Why? Because any. Why? I don't know. This is how it's been for the last 10 years. Wait a second, that box has been there for 10 years? They're like, yeah. It works perfect. Right, because it doesn't do anything. But they're like, it's up. My Ultra 2E is still my gateway. And you're like, but isn't that a 10 meg network card? And they're like, it's fine. 10 meg network card goes into a 100 meg pipe. No one cares. Still works. We get the interweb. I can see my kitties. Okay. So there is no magic bullet. Right? Because people get really lazy when they think they have the magic bullet. Like the people who go on the eat maple syrup and drink water diet or, whatever crazy fad diets there are. They just decide, well, I'm going to do this one thing, and then I'm not going to exercise, and magically my body is going to become like this temple of awesome. I'm going to look like I should be in 300 because I eat chicken all day long and don't eat anything else. It's crazy, but like we subscribe ourselves to these things so that we can force ourselves to be lazier. Because we're like, well, no, I'm putting all my bags in this UTM and whatever Palo Alto does, deep inspection. Who cares? If that thing's in my way when I'm doing a test, I'm going to break into the building, steal it, rip the thing out of the rack, go back home and hack it and like laugh at you because I'm going to have a cool new device. I'll probably like load Linux on that and hack you from your WAF just because it's funnier. Right? That's what an attacker is going to do. They're not going to go, oh, they have a WAF. Forget it. Attack somebody else. They're going to be like, oh, they have a WAF. Check this out. I can get by it. Look at this. How stupid is that? And then they publish it out to the internet and make money because they're researchers, right? It's awesome. Okay. Complexity reduces security. Anyone agree with that? Awesome. I tried to have this conversation with an antivirus vendor once. The antivirus vendor was dressed head to toe in yellow, and I was laughing because they look silly. Don't know which one it is. But I was trying to have the conversation of, if you put your thing on my machine, I become more vulnerable. They're like, no, it's antivirus, it's anti-malware, it's anti-this, it's anti, don't screw up social engineering. It does everything, right? It totally does everything because whatever, that's what you paid the $49 a year for, is to secure you from absolutely everything. And that's what this product does. And I'm like, well, hold on. Let's just take it from a port perspective, right? I have 2 ports open on my box right now. If I install it, does it open another port? They're like, yeah. Like, so I went from having 2 holes that you could attack to 3. I'm sorry, I almost made a really inappropriate girlfriend joke about that. So now I have 3 holes to attack. Like, what? you just made me more vulnerable. And they're like, no, we made you less vulnerable because now if you get stuff on your machine, I'm like, yeah, but what if somebody hacks the port that you opened up? And they're like, wow, that's not going to happen. And I showed them CVEs of all of those that you can exploit semantic with. And I'm like, but what about these? And they're like, well, flaws happen. All right, so do you or do you not make me more vulnerable? And they're like, no. And they couldn't get the basic understanding of, I had 2 ways to attack you, now I have 3 ways to attack you. Now, it's not saying don't go put AV on things, but it's a way to look at risk quite differently, right? So I want to try and spread the message that risk isn't always what's urgent and right in front of you. It could be just the theory of, I have more vectors I have to protect. Is it worth my time for the benefits that I get based on opening that thing up? And the answer with AV is, yeah, it is. But it's still a fact that it makes you more vulnerable. Yeah? Absolutely. No, I mean, and that's the thing, right? You can't fix those because you don't own well, I don't know, maybe you do own semantic, but I mean, if you did, I'll kiss your ass for drinks or something. But no, you're totally right. You're taking these things in that you can't even really control at the end of the day. The most you can do is apply the stupid patch thing that they give you, and parsers are still bad. The way it makes connections are still bad. Its sockets are all screwed up because it has to work with Windows, who breaks every TCP/IP rule that there is, right? Because somebody can't be clicking stuff. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And what ends up coming down is, do you trust your users to be responsible and browse safely? Or do you know that they're just going to be like, ooh, look, puppies, and click it, right? And that's what we end up having to manage is all right, does the puppy and kitty videos that are going to attack us kill us more than trying to teach these people how to browse securely? And for you and I, we could go without AV and be safe. Whereas a user who's just going to madly click on stuff until something happens is going to get owned all day long, right? So it's an awesome point, right? Is weighing the benefits of the complexity that you're building. Is it worth putting another 5 devices or an IDS that actually listens on a port or a WAF and this and that? Because that's just one more foothold somebody can get on your network. So look at those benefits. Don't automatically assume that putting in this new security technology is making you better, because no matter what, as soon as you turn the thing on, you've made yourself more vulnerable, and it's up to you to realize the benefit after that and make it give you benefit, right? I mean, it's like having weights around your house. Anybody stubbed their toe on weights before? It sucks, and you break your toenail off, and you just cry and yell at the thing like it can move. But it can't. So you made yourself more vulnerable with your little fitness product that was supposed to make you less vulnerable to stuff. But you put it in the middle because you're not used to playing with weights, and it's just now in the middle of the floor, and then you trip over it and break your neck. So you just got to be smart about some of the things. Finally, trying to understand what matters to environments really helps you protect the environment. So saying protect everything, if that's your strategy, I'm sorry, it's not sustainable at all. That was the Persians and the Romans. Conquer everything. Take over the world. Well, no, just take over a big enough chunk that you can do anything you want, right? Have enough money so that you can tell anyone to stick it. But you don't need all the money. You just need a lot of it, right? So how do you figure that stuff out? Do you guys know how to figure out kind of like what's important in the company? So I'll go through it quickly, right? So how to figure out what's important? Your product line, your brand, oddly enough, the employees. Those are always the ones that we don't want to think are important because, we manage a business. We're like, oh, we'll just get new ones. But they really are important because if you lose them all at once, you're kind of screwed. And the bottom line. If what you're doing, if putting in the firewall, if putting in the IDS, if making a new control, if doing debugging, if properly adhering to your SDLC and all those things, if you can tie them to some of these types of things in the company, you're doing your job. You're protecting what's important. If you're putting it in because you just want to put one in, you're not doing your job because you're not tying it to the company. Therefore, you're not even protecting the company. You're just protecting like your job or, your drinking stories so that you can be like, oh, I installed one of those last week, or protecting your resume because you want to go work somewhere else after the company that you're failing to protect gets owned. So how do you identify some of the data that's in there? Well, first, you have to realize that our opinions don't matter at all. Like, even though we're paid for our opinions, they totally don't matter when it comes to protection. The method of implementation is where we get to exercise our expertise, but not in picking what needs to be protected. Right? That's the business's problem. They have to know their business well enough because then they can help you and say, this is the gold. This is what we think is the most valuable. You do your voodoo magic IT security stuff on that little thing and make sure nobody steals that. Not don't hack the whole company, because that's like saying defend the entire empire. Don't care. If you want to keep the empire, defend what's important and let the other stuff get attacked here and there and do your best to mitigate those. Right? You got to think like the executives, and you have to think like the business in order to protect it. So as you're trying to protect these things, if there's a certain field that, you take credit cards, well, we have to put more protection on that than other areas if you can't get to that area in any other way. Or maybe it's a specific server, or maybe it's a physical, maybe you're in a bank, and you want to actually protect the physical money versus the electronic money, whatever it is. Then you have to do all sorts of work, right? You have to focus on the business. You have to try and identify who's the owner. You have to try and figure out, well, how does all this stuff play into my scenario? Right? Identify where it comes from, where it goes, how the money gets in there. So are the protections that you have built to be a security shop, or are they built to be protecting the money that the company makes? That's a hard question to answer. Because a lot of us just go, oh, yeah, I put the firewall in and the company makes more money magically. But really do the legwork and try and figure out all the way down to how many more dollars do you have right now than you would have if this wasn't in. And I guarantee you'll get way different levels of support from the staff and from the other people that you work with. If you can say, I bought the firewall for 10 grand, but it just saved you $10 million, and can show them exactly how that works, you'll get all the money you ever wanted. I've never had problems with security program budgets, ever. And I know that's like shocking. But ever. I've never even had somebody challenge me. Because they're like, yeah, this is stupid. We spend 10 grand to make 10 million. I'm all for that. Go. You got to think dirty sometimes. Because sometimes showing people impact really helps. So if you know what impacts them, you know how to really show them the level of impact. Not showing them a shell in a box, but actually showing them, well, we run a hospital, and this is how I'm going to kill all the patients today. That's a big difference to, oh, well, here's a shell on the health system. They don't care about that. They're like, what's the little DOS box? That's funny. I remember I used to use those when I was a kid. You're like, no, I owned your system. And they're like, yeah, whatever. Enjoy your day in computer world, crazy nerd guy. And they're like, go back downstairs. I'll give you $1,000. You can get a new laptop or RAM or whatever it is that you're into. Right? They don't care. They just want you. But if you go, hey, we run a hospital, and I figured out how to kill all the patients today, imagine the difference in like them listening to you. They'd be like, oh, yeah, wait, hold on. You kill all the patients today. What's that about? And then you show them, and they're like, yeah, I don't want that to ever happen ever. So whatever, here's a check, and they give you like one of the big, you want a golf tournament checks. And they're like, you just use this check and I'll sign it for anything you want because that can never happen. So go make it so. You have all your money. It's unbelievable how it works. I mean, it really, really does. Right? If that doesn't work, well, how can you force your competition to be better than you are? If you're in the number 2 spot and they're number 3, or you're number 1 and they're number 5, can you show them how exfil of some of your intellectual property would actually destroy your place in the market? Because if you can, and you put your business case together for that, and you show them this is how it works, now you're showing them, hey, guys, look, I know you're spending all this money on the roof, but the window is open. And I checked weather, and it's totally going to rain. So, like, can we close the window? And you see that the cost barrier for that isn't very high. So they're like, yeah, sure, go ahead. And then all of a sudden, you provided them benefit. Now you're more valuable to the organization, which is even better. You can do the annoying CISSP type controls, too, because they at least get you in some type of regimen. The way I like to do it is kind of go against a couple things that they choose. So I don't know if any of you guys know or heard of the stuff that I do, but I like messing with people more than anything else. That's like my favorite. Right? Because you have this big, giant supercomputer on your head, and breaking that, to me, is more fun than breaking systems. So the way I like to go at it is, all right, you guys choose. I'll give you some things that we want to do, and you give them the like fluffy, magical confidentiality, integrity, and availability. And it sounds all noble and great, and they're like, oh, yeah, we want that. And then you say that makes criticality. So take the stuff that's important, guys, and just put it on a little chart. Tell me what's important to the business. And they go, okay, cool. So they do that. And then you rank them. And you let the executives do all this. By the way, you have nothing to do with this. You're just like the stenographer. You just take the notes. And at the end of the day, you start figuring out, oh, well, cool, right? So this is what we need to protect. This is what you're telling me the business is, because I don't know, I'm just dumb IT guy. And this is what we need to protect. And they're like, yes, this is what the business is in data form. So you make scores, and then you say, now what do you want me to protect? Do you want me to protect everything? Here's the cost. Do you want me to protect 2 and above? Here's the cost. 3 and above? Here's the cost. 4 and above? Here's the cost. 5's. 5's the most important. So obviously you have to protect that. But what they'll see is that by protecting 5, it costs X. By protecting 5 and 4, it costs X with a 0 at the end of it. By protecting 5, 4, and 3, it costs X with 2 zeros at the end of it. And they keep going down the chain, and now they start to understand because you're not doing it. They told you how to protect it. You're just trying to get facilitated, right? So at the very least, you get funding for protecting the 5s because they know that 5s can kill them. And then they have this constant nagging itch in the back of their head every time that they go to bed at night, thinking, should I have told them to protect 4 too? Oh, man. Because if they get enough 4s, it'll be just as bad as a 5. Maybe we could do 4.5, and then the IT guy can go do some math, and I'll feel a little better. So, you know, in a couple months, they're like, so we got the 5 thing going. What about 4.5? So then they start making the security program better for you because it just eats them up, knowing that even the 1s can hurt them at the end of the day. So they start forcing the security program for you because it's based on the business, because it's tied to the bottom line of the business. This is a really different way to protect your business than buy a bunch of crap, put it on the perimeter, and like, you know, go play Warcraft. Right? This is what makes businesses operate. Yeah, I know it's boring. But it is. So this is why we have, you know, all sorts of hackers, and they buy all sorts of dope cars that I can't buy because I don't make that much money, because instead of breaking into things illegally, I have to do it legally, and it's completely unfair. I love that picture. Because it's unfair because we just expect users to clean up their own shit. Yeah. You can ask me a question anytime you want. Well, availability is a functional attribute, by all means, and it's metrically comprehensible, and you can trend it all day long. Yes. Yep. So in anything where you have multiple factors and only one can be static from a lab perspective and a control group perspective, any of the other factors that can apply to that static factor increasing and to become weighting mechanisms. Now, they're not empirical forms of transversal, but they are weighting mechanisms. And if more of those weighting mechanisms apply, now that availability thing that you can trend and track has to change, right? Because you have additional weighted mechanisms, right? Because weighted mechanisms usually can't be static. They have to be dynamic. But the way that you tie those weighted mechanisms back into it, it is something that, it honestly is possible, as voodoo as it sounds. Because you have something solid to go off of in the base. And that's really what this is about, because you're totally right when you say that most security programs are founded on something that you can't trend or track at all. It's all hypothetical, mumbo-jumbo, oh, the Chinese are going to steal all our stuff. And you're totally right. But if you get one thing that is trackable, then you can kind of progress with weighted mechanisms. I guess that's the answer that I have that I've seen work, right? Because other stuff, I'm totally with you, man. It doesn't work at all because there's no reason to do it. So step 0 is education, right? I don't know. I think we teach people deception this way, right? Instead of teaching people deception this way. It's okay. You can laugh at it. It's funny. Right? Everybody knows what deception is, but if you start learning it this way versus this way, it's a different context. Same thing with the security program. If you learn to, fight wars like this and not have castles, you don't have anything to lose by educating that way. You can only gain things, right? By understanding that even though you're the superpower, the guerrillas can still attack you, trying to identify how those attacks would occur isn't a waste of your time. Because even if they don't occur, you've fortified other areas of business and actually made it more successful. It's like the whole reason for SDLC and app testing, right? Is if my application stays up, processes more cards per second, XYZ, and the byproduct of that ends up being the security function that I'm going for, I've actually used security to drive the functionality of the application and make the application better, even though I was just trying to make the application faster and more productive. But if I could do those together, I now have a new motivator. Does that make sense a little? More than the mumbo-jumbo bullshit way of pick stuff out of a hat and go install it. Cool. That's all I want. What's that? Yes. So yeah, I'm at the end of that because that's exactly where I was going with it, is that we've already gotten compromised, so we can't be afraid of getting compromised, right? So that's something, because I think a lot of us build our security programs around never getting hacked. Like, I haven't been hacked yet, and I don't want to be, so I have to install this crap, which, to your point, is totally useless and is not a plan, right? It's just overreacting to something that you can guess. And where do I start? So that's really all that I have to say about those things. I don't know. What do you guys think? Is it mumbo jumbo? I'm just annoying. The pictures were funny. You wish that I talked about hacking stuff. I mean, what's your response? I don't know. I'm not sitting there. My solution is hard work. And no one likes that solution because it takes effort and time, and they want to be skinny quickly instead of like, well, in 2 years, if you go to the gym every day and you eat right, you'll be pretty, right? And I always get that when I get talks of like, well, there's no solution. Well, I don't want there to be a solution. I want it to be a progress. right? Cool. Awesome.
Solution.
Yeah, I think the purpose behind that is because, more back to the complexity thing, is that a lot of times, do you find that people don't do security things because they think it's hard, even though it isn't?
Not quite sure I understand what you're asking.
Do you find pushback when there's an obvious security control that can get implemented that really isn't that bad, right? If vulnerability scanning, right? You can have this automated thing go look for some vulnerabilities. And then people are like, absolutely not, I'm not doing that because it might take a box down someday. And you can plan for it and do those things and make it kind of easier, but you get instant pushback because people think it's hard.
Well, I think people have a tendency to want to implement products over using their experience and their hard work.
I agree. And I think that's why I try and make some things purposely trivial, because maybe that'll open the opportunity to somebody saying, well, maybe doing this stupid graph work thing may help. And it's not as hard and complicated as it really would seem before I get started.
I like the simplicity, don't get me wrong. But what I find troublesome is that I just don't think it's that easy to demonstrate your core business, your security stuff that you put in, and how they correlate. I haven't managed to see it. I haven't seen anyone do it appropriately and properly, which is why I would be interested to see how you did that in a scenario. For next time, give me a scenario of what you've done and how you demonstrated that.
Absolutely. And so that's, you have met any intent that I had in giving this talk, which is trying to get people to look at solutions that aren't the way that we're doing things right now. So that is everything I could ever ask for, is for somebody to go, bullshit, prove it. That's what I want, right? Because we've been saying bullshit, prove it over and over again, and then we get like owned and it doesn't prove it, but then we do the things the same way again and we go, ha, I put this in, now prove it. And you're like, well, it's just another thing to get around. Like, we have to ignore that it even exists and try another method. And that's right on, brother. That's exactly what I can only hope for. Because, I mean, doing all those charts, it's one of those like stupid kind of social things, right? That security is a feeling. It's not a static concept. So if you feel secure, you are, because the word security is a feeling. It's not a measurable task. You can apply it to some measurable things, but really at the end of the day, security is a feeling. So how do you promote that feeling both organically and empirically in environments? And the way is to tie it to things that you're not concerned with. It's to tie it to things that this person you're trying to preach it to is concerned with. Because if they get concerned about it, they're going to do things on their own. If you're concerned about it for them, they're like, oh, don't worry, Chris is worried about it for me so I can sleep easy. But if you make it harder for them to sleep, they're gonna start doing things on their own so that they can feel better. And that's what we want to do. We want other people doing the job to distribute the load so that we're not trying to lift the whole organization up, that the organization is lifting itself, and we get to tune some of the components as it goes along. So hopefully that was not...
You're taken a little bit by surprise here. Usually people don't start asking questions. You usually have to go on stage and help them. But of course, Christopher's an exception here. Also, I usually try to think of some questions myself to get people started, especially in the morning like this. The only thing that I could think of was that, is there ever a war against a, has there been, I mean, back to history, war against a guerrilla force that actually made it and actually won?
You know what? So guerrilla forces, since they're kind of decentralized, never really win, right? They never went and took over all the Ottoman Empire because that wasn't their goal. Their goal was...
No. Did anybody ever beat them?
Beat the guerrillas or
beat the guerrillas.
Well, yeah. But when you beat them, they have nothing to lose.
Right.
Right? So it's if I get into a fight over territory, but I'm not concerned with taking the territory,
Right.
then even if I lose, my job was just to get into a fight, and I was successful. Even if I lost, I was still successful. I got into the fight, checked the box, cool, I'm done. Whether I win or not ends up becoming an arbitrary sense at the end of it, which is kind of the fun part about those types of warfare, right? I mean, you can go attack a whole bunch of stuff on the internet, and you get to give yourself the thumbs up just because you're attacking.
That's true.
So it's an awesome question because, yeah, they lose all the time because, like, you know, Napoleon came in and just burned down 50 towns and killed everybody, and they're like,
it's not always bleak then.
Right. You know, the fighting stops.
It just takes 25 years sometimes.
Right. And then you have movies made about how you drink blood.
Yeah. Any more excellent questions? Oh, we're back to Christopher. Let me come down with the mic.
I like picking fights, by the way. A lot of it's on purpose. Like, I don't actually believe everything that I say. I just pick fights on purpose.
Threat agents, a very fantastic term. Should we be assuming a threat agent, or from whom are we protecting stuff? How do we determine that? Should we just think of the Chinese as the attackers now, or is that the superpower we're protecting ourselves from? Because, again, coming back to the correlation to...
You and I could just hang out and talk for a while.
investment, you know, if I'm protecting me against Fred, the next door wireless hacker guy, okay, I put on some encryption. Woohoo. But, yeah, or North Korea.
So you have to know the battlefield in order to identify how you're going to respond.
Yeah, but with the internet, it seems like that's the whole battlefield, and the superpower is as powerful as your next door neighbor in some way.
Absolutely.
So is that relevant? Should we care about the threat agent?
Yeah, you know, so you obviously do some of the FAIR and Varus stuff, right? As far as threat agent frameworks. Varus is a risk formulation.
Yeah, by Verizon, right?
Yeah. So, and then the FAIR scoring mechanisms also have the threat agent piece. Every time I've ever gotten into the conversation with Jack, who made FAIR, or Alex, who made Varus, the one thing that they still haven't been able to respond to me on, that I'm waiting for, because then I'll just declare defeat and just lay down. But until then, I'm going to stay vigilant, is that, to me, threat doesn't matter as an agent unless the agent has intent. And unless you can derive what the intent of that agent is, anything you do against the threat agent is a guess. And you've wound up in the same circle. Because maybe my neighbor broke into my Wi-Fi, but he doesn't have the intent to hurt me. Does it hurt me? No, because he didn't have the intent to hurt me. And if somebody has the intent but doesn't have the skill, well, now I could start trying to identify those things. So if, you know, we had the all-knowing eye and we could see everything and everyone and everywhere, we could start identifying capabilities versus intent and derive the threat agent's logical nature of being able to exercise an attack that can hurt me. But until we get some of those types of things where intent can really be derived, I still honestly believe that we're just guessing.
I agree.
Word. Yeah, we need to make some, I don't know, we need to just watch everybody, I guess. I hate that, though. That's just screwed up.
And I think a comment to that is also that we don't know the business value or the information that we should protect in many situations. It's also a guess.
Yeah. Oh, I totally agree.
So I think that's one of the biggest problems, that we are trying to secure something that is really a big question mark.
Mm-hmm. Well, and that's totally why I skate that problem by transferring it to the executives.
Yeah,
right?
to the business owners.
Right? It's like, hey, you own the business? Cool, then you know what's important. Not my job. And yeah, it's a cop-out way to do it, but really at the end of the day, they're the ones who should know it, and if they don't know it, you know, it's their bad, not mine.
But I think we who work with IT security and information security should try to help them with the decision on together in a collaboration. What should you look for to protect?
Yeah, and that's kind of why, like, I do that stupid threat matrix thing, is because they can give me the factors, and then I can make scenarios that, like, I can be shady guy in the background.
Yeah.
And you know, whenever you do this, if you ever try and do this, you'll come into the conversation about email. And immediately, email is all high. And you're like, okay, well, check this out. Let's say email went down today, and it was never coming back. And they're like, we're screwed. We're like, all right, are we so screwed that we completely go out of business? They're like, no, you know, eventually they break, and they're like, well, we'd find a way around it. And I'm like, do we still have telephones? You know, can we call people? Can we actually, like, go meet them in person? And then the high starts, like, coming down to medium, and eventually it gets down to low, and people are like, oh, yeah, email is just that thing that we rely on that we don't really need. But having that conversation, it's like going through a therapy session for somebody, and they realize that they're an alcoholic in the middle of a drink. They're like, oh, damn it, you know, like, I can't believe I was doing that. But it's totally right. Because you can kind of play off of us wanting to act like a gangster, and you get to act like a gangster at that meeting and be like, oh, well, I broke into this, this is down, this is off, now what do you do? You make car parts? Yeah. Can we still make car parts with all this stuff off? Yeah. Looks like we're good.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah.
Right, any more questions? No? Do you see the hands? Settle. There we go.
Yeah. He's like, can you shut up? Sorry.
Well, I guess most of what you're saying is, and I agree that we're doing security wrong, and that's what we're trying to do here at this conference as well. But what you is proposing is being more of sales than actually less of security and more of sales from the security department. But how do you do that? How do you become a salesperson rather than a technician?
Yeah, I mean, aren't we selling a feeling? I mean, with every box, with every packet that we defend, aren't we going, hey, I just saved your ass. You owe me. You know? Oh, we didn't get hacked today. Or, oh, I found this bug on this machine, but I cleared it before it did this. I mean, we're natively sales because our whole job's about feelings. It's just we have to accept some of those. This is one of those, like, I hope people can accept the job that they're in versus pretend that they can sit behind their keys all day and actually make the difference. That the difference comes when you interact with somebody. It doesn't come when you stop the packet. It comes when the business knows the packet got stopped and could have hurt them. Then that value and connection gets put together. So it's more the, you know, get out of the basement and talk to people, because then the value will be felt. And if it's felt, we're accomplishing our mission of making people feel secure. How to do it? I don't know, use NLP, like mess with their head, put in anchoring cues, make them bark like a dog, hypnosis. I mean, I can show you how to do all that stuff really easily. I have like 1 billion talks on those things. But yeah, I mean, cheat, hack them. Whatever, we're hackers. Just go break into their head and put it in there.
Yep, thank you.
Yeah.
All right, any more questions?
Cool.
No?
Thank you, guys.
All right, thanks, Chris, then.